Hi, this is Esther with Discover Your Origins. In this video, I'm going to be talking about names and family history. And I wrote this blog article called An Easy Beginner's Guide to Names and Family History, and it has links to everything I'm going to talk about. So names, we all have them. First names, last names, we may have nicknames, and those names and the names of our ancestors give us clues to our family history. So I'm going to start with the Family Search Research Wiki, and I highly recommend this. It's often an underutilized resource that has articles about all kinds of topics related to family history research. And in this case, I'm going to use this to help explain names and what they mean and all about them. So in order to find information about names in Family Search Research Wiki, you'll just click in the search box here in the center of the screen and type the country. So the example I'm going to use is Sweden, and then type personal name after the country. Sweden is a really good example because there's a lot to do with names in Sweden. And this is a pretty extensive article, so let me just scroll down to show you how much information is here. So if you're researching any ancestors in Sweden, I highly recommend reading this article because there's so much here. So right off the bat, the article includes a video and a handout that you can download. So I recommend watching the video. It's about Swedish naming customs. And then there's some quick facts. During the 19th century, people began adopting fixed surnames. Sweden was known for using patronymic surnames. So the father's given name plus his suffix was used for the surname of the child. This means that the children in a family group may have different surnames. So for example, Larsen or Lars' daughter. So the father's given name is Lars, and then you have Lars' son, which is a boy, and Lars' daughter, which is a girl. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule, so don't hold fast to this if you're finding something different. But if you figure out what the child's name is, because often they used abbreviations, make sure you spell it out all the way. There were a lot of laws related to names in Sweden, so make sure you understand that because that will place your ancestor in time if you know certain things. And they did have naming patterns. And also another thing to know about Sweden is that names could be based on nature. A soldier may take a temporary name or adopt that as their permanent name when they became a soldier. And some names could be based on occupation. And also you may have a farm name associated with your ancestor. That farm name is not necessarily their official name, but it may have been used in records. So if you see that, there's guidelines here on how to deal with that. And of course, there's always the question, did my ancestor change their name when they immigrated to America? Possibly. And so this gives some examples of how that might happen. So any Scandinavian country that you research, definitely look at this. So another example would be Finland. And again, there's another extensive article with some outside resources and explanatory information. It's very similar in a lot of ways to Sweden. So before 1883, Finnish records recorded in Swedish, not Finnish. They recorded in Finnish later. So you need to know that when you're researching your ancestor. So very important to read this page if you're researching Finland. So I did some random searching just to see what other countries were represented in Family Search Research Wiki about names. And I looked up Uganda and personal names. And it's not an extensive article, but it does have links to help you understand the names that were used, some naming practices in Uganda. So you can look up any country and personal names and find information. The one big exception to this, though, is the United States. So let me go back to my article. And I do have some explanation on this. So you cannot look up United States personal names, and that is because the United States has a lot of different naming patterns and traditions, and it depends on your ancestors' country of origin. So, for example, I've been researching ancestors in the southern states, and the southern states were settled by immigrants from England, Scotland, and Ireland, and even Germany. And so you kind of have to figure out the country of origin of your ancestor and then read up on those person name pages at the Family Search Research Wiki to kind of gain an understanding of your ancestors' naming patterns. When you start to look at your family and the family groups and the names that were used, you will see patterns. So, for example, I looked up England personal names, which is this page here. Again, a very extensive article. And I read through here to kind of understand some of the things that I was seeing. If you scroll down, there's a section here on naming patterns. So there was a tradition to name children to honor a particular family member. Sometimes they named them after famous people like the King of England, so King George. Or in America, they would have named them after founding fathers like Benjamin Franklin or something. So a traditional naming pattern would start with the first son would be named after the paternal grandfather, the second son named after the maternal grandfather. This is not a hard and fast rule. I see exceptions to this all the time, but it may give you a clue if you're trying to take your family back another generation to look for somebody named or shares a name with the first son of a family. So anyway, just something to look at and consider if you're looking at your family in America. One link that I found through the Family Search Research Wiki is this traditional nicknames in old documents. So very often your ancestor may have a formal given name and then they would also go by another name. And that formal name and the nickname may both be recorded in records. So this is a really long list of nicknames and the corresponding formal name. And you may not realize that your ancestor was using a nickname until you kind of look through this list and then you realize they might have. So they have some examples here. So for example, Molly may be a nickname for Margaret. And Margaret's interesting because there are lots of possible names or nicknames for Margaret. Tom traditionally replaces Thomas, Polly for Mary, and Bill's commonly used for William. So how do you search this list? Because it is really long. I mean, I could scroll through here and you can see that it's really long. So to search this list, use Control F in your browser. This is a find that you can use on any web page, and it's especially useful here. So for example, if I do Control F and my ancestor used the name Peggy, it automatically jumps to where that is on the page, and you can see that Peggy is also a nickname for Margaret. So if you see Peggy, or if you see Polly, Polly is used a lot, then search records or realize that Polly is a nickname and that your ancestor's formal name may actually be Mary or Margaret. So very helpful when researching. Family Search Research Wiki does encourage you that if you encounter a nickname and you are able to figure out what the corresponding formal name is, to submit it to this list to help other people. And there's some guidelines here how to do that. Okay, another link that Family Search Research Wiki gave in some of their articles that I found is this Behind the Name website. So in this website, you can search given names and surnames and find the name meanings, popularity, origin, meaning, that kind of thing. And I use this website to help me with my Darthula Rasp research project because Darthula is a really unusual name and I just wanted to know more about it. And so you can just search here in the search box in the middle of the screen, and it will take you to the page. And you can see that it's a name that was used in the American South and that it's rare, not used very often. There are other spellings or variations of the name, and it gave a meaning and suggestion of where it may have came from. So, for example, Dorthula was from a poem by a Scottish poet named James Macpherson. So that tells me that Dorthula is a Scottish name. It doesn't necessarily mean that that ancestor was immigrated from Scotland, but that her name came from a Scottish origin, which means her family may have Scottish origins. So anyway, you can search any name. So for example, Sarah. If we look that up, a lot more information because it's a much more common, popular name. And it gives origins, pronunciation guides, when it came into use, potential popularity. You know, you can look through here and see the diminutives, that's a hard word to say, which is also another form of nickname. Popularity in various countries, all kinds of information. So really interesting. They have some additional tools like a random renamer, translator, anagrams, you know. So definitely look through this site. I found it very interesting and helpful when I was looking at my ancestor's name. Another site that I like is that came from the Family Search Research Wiki is this abbreviations for English names. So if you are doing research with English names, and this includes America or England or anywhere that English is spoken, your ancestor's name may have been recorded with an abbreviation. And so sometimes when you're looking at the record, you're not really sure what that abbreviation stands for. This site can help you. And again, it's a really long list, and so you can search for your ancestor's name, or you can search with the abbreviation or the formal name, and it will help you. So one common one is JNO that you might see, and this will jump down to the center of the screen here. JNO stands for John, and you will see that very often. And just above that, you have JAS, which stands for James. So, you know, if you're seeing an abbreviation and you're not really sure what the possibilities are, look through this list. Okay, so going back to my article, I explained everything that I just talked about, nicknames, abbreviations. There's some given name considerations that you might want to look at. You know, when did middle names come into fashion? And, you know, certain religious communities may have additional names that they give to a child. You know, some names are gender specific, some are unisex. So, you know, I kind of go through that and talk about that and have links to those things in my article. So I encourage you to read the article at my blog and also look at the Family Search Research Wiki for more information. Thanks for watching.